Hi, Miss. So this is my presentation for the culminating project, and I chose to do a video, and I'm going to be using a PowerPoint to supplement the presentation. So let's get started. So these are the topics I'm going to be covering. For technology, I'm going to be covering mobile phones, television, the vacuum cleaner, and for the health issue, I'm going to be covering and talking about childhood obesity. So this is basically to show the evolution of the cell phone. The first mobile phone. So let me just start off by talking a bit about cell phones. So it is evident that technology has become a big part of everyday living. Mobile phones in particular are a revolutionary innovation. It can be referred to as a cell phone, wireless phone, or hand phone, but either way, it serves the same function. A means of communication that is convenient and does not include the hassles of wires. In our day and age, mobile phones are equipped with many neat features, such as gaming, SMS, video calling, and MP3 to name a few. Although mobile phones have taken over our current society, they have been around for several decades in some form or another. From enormous 80-pound car-mounted beasts to tiny terminals in our back pockets, mobile phones have come a long way. What once cost thousands, weighed 2 pounds, and packed 60 minutes of battery life now costs $99, weighs about 4 ounces, and packs 5 to 10 hours of battery life, and also includes a full-fledged computer in a sense, considering it includes a video camera, audio-video playback, and high-speed internet access. So the first mobile phone. In 1946, Swedish police used the first mobile phone. The device was similar to a two-way radio, but worked via a connection to the telephone network and the car's battery. The phone was able to make just 6 phone calls before draining the car battery. Due to the fact that it was power-hungry, it required permanent installation in a car or other vehicle, and as a result, very few people owned, used, or encountered such devices. So now, the first generation of phones. That's how it looked like. Alright. So the first generation, also called 1G. In 1983, Motorola unveiled the first truly portable phone, the Dynatac 8000X. It weighed close to 2 pounds, was nicknamed the Brick thanks to its length of 13 inches, and cost close to $4,000. Its battery allowed for 1 hour of talk time and could store 30 numbers. These first-generation phones came in a tote bag that could charge the battery from one's car cigarette light adapter. Others looked vaguely like briefcases that packed along larger batteries for longer talk time. First-generation phones ran on an analog system, which made call quality questionable, and resultantly calls were frequently lost. The Dynatac became an instant cultural icon, both as a status symbol for the rich and as an almost miraculous wonder phone that a person could use anywhere. With the Dynatac, the cell phone revolution had finally begun. So the second generation, 2G of phones. So that's basically showing the phones from the 90s, and then it gets closer to 2000, so it gets smaller and smaller. So second generation. Cellular phones from the early 1990s on are considered second generation, or 2G. The 1990s models are considered second generation 2G because they were able to work on TDMA and CDMA systems both in the US and Europe and used digital circuit switch transmission technology, which lowered the number of dropped calls and improved call quality. To clarify the tech terms mentioned, TDMA is an acronym for Time Division Multiple Access, and its meaning I could not make sense of, and I'm quite sure anyone else could not either, except for those familiar with technological and computer terms, of course. On the other hand, CDMA is an acronym for Code Division Multiple Access, and once again, I was utterly clueless in regards to its definition. Anyways, moving on. Second generation phones also benefited from computer chip technology, which allowed for smaller cell phones and phone batteries. Cell phone use grew exponentially when these advances occurred. And lastly, we have the third generation of mobile phones, they were called 3G. So, third generation, or 3G phones, came out just a few years after 2G and allowed phones to multitask. This meant the phones can do much more than really conversation. They can even make and receive emails and SMS texts, as well as use the internet from Wi-Fi. So the next topic is television. This is just an illustration of the television evolution from these little box things to plasma flat screens. And that's a funny illustration showing how the bigger the television, the smaller the person, but as the TVs grew smaller in size, the people became bigger. So television in the 1930s. After its formal introduction at the 1939 World's Fair, the first real commercial televisions became widely available. Programming was sparse. There was no must-see TV. Networks broadcasted specials like the 1932 presidential election, boxing matches, and news reports. One of the most recognized images from this early era includes the 1936 Olympics from Berlin, in which Hitler announced the opening of the ceremonies. So TV in the 1940s. Much of the hype surrounding televisions in the 1940s was swept under the rug with the onset of World War II. Color was introduced at the early part of the decade. This is also when the television commercial was invented. During the war, the television was used as a small propaganda machine, encouraging people to buy bonds and support the effort. The post-war economy was strong, and the late 40s saw a boom in television production. Two types of models surfaced, called the tabletop and console. People like Milton Berle, Ed Sullivan, and Howdy Doody became some of the TV's first stars. Television in the 1950s. Often, the 1950s have been seen as the heyday of the economical boom in the United States and referred to as the golden age of television. Color became the wave of the future and the remote controls invented, although most people had neither. The tube became an advertiser's dream come true. Products were marketed directly to the consumer by sponsorships. The soap opera is thus named for the cleaning products that sponsored the daytime dramas targeted directly at women. The family dinner was revolutionized with the introduction of the TV dinner. This marked the end of the traditional family meal. By the end of the decade, a 21-inch black and white set was about $200, and the average 21-inch color set was almost $500. TV in the 1960s. Okay. Often, the 60s are seen as the end of an era. An age of innocence seen in the 1950s died and would never be seen again in the United States. After the assassination of President Kennedy, families gathered around to watch the news depicting a changing social climate and growing hostility towards an oppressive government. Americans began to get more news from the television than the newspaper. Televisions became more portable and affordable. It is estimated 75 million people watched the Beatles on The Ed Sullivan Show. The Vietnam War was the first conflict to be televised. Doctors legally advised cigarettes. By the end of the decade, there were approximately 200 million television sets around the world. TV in the 1970s. Sesame Street debuted to children across the country. The show is still on the air after more than 40 years. Nighttime broadcasts broke the traditional molds. Couples were now seen sleeping in the same beds, actresses could show their belly buttons, and All in the Family and MASH became two of the most popular evening programs. Although it wasn't the first home video game, Pong became the most popular. The average salary was $7,500 a year, and the average price for TV was between $400 and $700. The first direct-to-broadcast satellite television was launched in 1972. 1978 was the last year large black and white consoles were manufactured. TV in the 1980s. The 80s saw little innovation with the television specifically. However, there became a growing number of television accessories, like the VCR, and home game consoles like Nintendo. With the introduction of the VCR, people could watch movies in the comfort of their own homes and record and watch their favorite programs according to their own timetables. Although cable had been around since the 1950s, cable television saw a significant boom during the 80s. Sitcoms were more popular than ever. The 80s spawned programs like Roseanne, The Cosby Show, and Married with Children, which is the longest running sitcom in television history. Is it 10 minutes yet? Stop it.